For centuries, the Roman Empire tried to bury the truth behind the glowing marble of the Palatine Hill, behind the silk curtains of the imperial palace. Emperor Caligula built a private world of fear, desire, cruelty, and unrestrained power. They called it the Garden of Venus, but what happened there had nothing to do with love, and everything to do with domination. Tonight, we uncover the secrets Rome tried to erase. The Palatine Hill, the beating heart of imperial Rome. Historians speak of its beauty, the domes, the gardens, the perfumed fountains, but beneath the splendor, it carried the weight of unspeakable secrets. Caligula, Rome's most unpredictable ruler, chose this sacred hill to build something no emperor before him had dared to imagine, a sanctuary of pleasure, fear, and ritual. Whispers spread across the empire, stories of women disappearing into the palace, families too terrified to ask questions, and senators who returned pale and trembling after a single night in the emperor's private chambers. They called this place the Garden of Venus, but no writer of the time dared describe what the emperor truly did within its walls. Before the garden existed, before the terror, Caligula was adored. Some called him the Star Child, grandson of the heroic Germanicus, son of Rome's beloved general. But power, absolute, unquestioned power, alters men. And in Caligula's case, it shattered every boundary, every restraint, every moral thread holding the empire together. The Senate welcomed him as a savior, the people showered him with flowers. They did not see the paranoia brewing beneath his smile, nor the obsession that would lead to the creation of his forbidden sanctuary. Caligula's garden was not a garden of flowers, but of power. He demanded architects design a hidden courtyard deep within the palace. A place isolated from the outside world. A place where he could reshape reality according to his desires. The entrance had no guards, only silence. Inside stood a marble statue of Venus, towering, perfect, cold, watching everything. Caligula's idea was simple, a paradise where he alone could control fate, beauty, and pleasure. Women were brought here, some willingly, most not. The women forced into the garden came from all walks of life. Some were daughters of senators, offered voluntarily under political pressure. Some were captured foreigners. Some were palace servants who simply vanished one night. Caligula believed Venus required living offerings, women whose beauty symbolized Rome itself. Each woman was stripped of her identity, renamed, dressed, trained, and prepared for rituals that defied Roman customs and violated every law of decency. Many tried to escape, none succeeded. Every new moon, Caligula performed a selection ritual, a blend of superstition and cruelty. He believed Venus spoke to him through omens, shadows, flickers of light on water. The women were lined before him, trembling as incense choked the air. He walked through them, silent, letting fear speak louder than words. Sometimes he touched a woman's shoulder gently. Sometimes he said nothing. Sometimes he laughed. Those chosen were escorted behind a velvet curtain, never again seen by those who remained. A select few attended these rituals, scribes, physicians, musicians, and attendants. Most lived in constant fear. They wrote nothing. They spoke nothing. Yet small fragments of their testimony survived. A whisper to a friend. A note hidden behind a wall. A confession overheard in a tavern. These clues paint a terrifying picture. They describe a ruler who believed himself divine, and a sanctuary where no human rules applied. Caligula's madness deepened. He began to suspect conspiracies everywhere. He believed his family plotted against him, his senators whispered behind curtains, the gods themselves tested him with hallucinations. The Garden of Venus soon became more than a sanctuary, it became a prison, a stage for his paranoia. He forced attendants to reenact scenes from mythology. He believed Venus required loyalty through suffering. No one dared refuse him. Once a year, Caligula held his most infamous ritual, the Night of the Red Lanterns. The palace was bathed in crimson torchlight. Perfumed smoke drifted over marble floors. Soft music played, slow, hypnotic, unsettling. Women were dressed in red veils and led into the inner garden. Caligula watched from a balcony, silent, unblinking, choosing partners for rituals only he understood. The women moved like ghosts. The attendants obeyed like puppets. The palace trembled with whispers of dread. Beyond the garden stood the marble chamber, a circular room carved entirely from polished white stone. This room witnessed the darkest chapters of Caligula's reign. Inside, the emperor conducted rituals blending Roman religion with his own fantasies. He believed Venus demanded to possess him, that through acts of dominance and cruelty, she granted him divine strength. Many women fainted inside the chamber. Some never came out. The walls heard screams that marble should never have heard. One account survived from a palace physician, anonymous, found centuries later on a wax tablet fragment. He described women collapsing from exhaustion. Others trembling uncontrollably from fear. Caligula blamed Venus when anything went wrong. He claimed the goddess was angry, and demanded harsher rituals. The physician begged to leave the palace. Days later, he disappeared without a trace. The inner sanctum of the garden contained something most disturbing of all, a gallery of marble statues that Caligula claimed were blessings from Venus herself. But several attendants whispered a different truth. These statues weren't statues when they first entered the palace. One servant recalled seeing a woman frozen in terror, her face eerily similar to one carved in marble days later. Another remembered Caligula standing before a newly sculpted figure, whispering, "Now you cannot run, now Venus holds you forever." Historians still debate whether the claims were literal or symbolic, illusions caused by fear, or a metaphor for the fate of those who entered the garden and were never seen again. Either way, the statues all had one thing in common: their expressions were not peaceful, they were horrified. Outside the palace walls, rumors spread like wildfire. Mothers warned their daughters never to walk near the Palatine Hill at night. Senators avoided eye contact with the emperor, terrified their families might be chosen as offerings. But Roman society was trapped. Caligula controlled the army. The Senate was powerless. The people feared punishment for even speaking his name with disapproval. A single whisper could lead to disappearance. Still, whispers grew. Some said Caligula no longer visited the Senate because he feared they plotted against him. Others swore he summoned priests to bless the Garden of Venus, priests who never returned. The empire began to tremble, not from war or famine, but from the madness of a single man. One evening, during a lavish feast inside the garden, Caligula stood before his guests wearing a veil of golden silk and declared, "I am no longer a mortal. I am the living son of Venus. All beauty, all desire, all fear, belongs to me." The musicians stopped playing. The guests froze. No one dared to speak. Caligula forced every senator present to bow before him. Some trembled. Some fainted. Then he turned to the women of the garden, dressed in shimmering veils and gold chains, and commanded them to dance around him in a ritual that felt both sacred and terrifying. From that night forward, he no longer referred to his private sanctuary as a garden. He called it the Temple of Living Worship. The night that sealed Caligula's fate began like any other ritual: incense, veils, music, trembling attendants. But something was different. A storm rolled over Rome. Thunder shook the palace. Lightning flashed across the statue of Venus, illuminating Caligula's silhouette like an omen. Witnesses later claimed the emperor spoke in a feverish voice, insisting Venus had warned him of betrayal, that someone inside the palace would kill him. He demanded the women bow. He demanded the attendants swear loyalty. He demanded the guards confess conspiracies that never existed. Paranoia consumed him. Hours passed. The storm grew. And in the Garden of Venus, fear reached its breaking point. The next morning, as Caligula walked through a corridor connecting the garden to the theater, the inevitable happened. Conspirators, soldiers, senators, even members of the Praetorian Guard, surrounded him. Not for power. Not for politics. But because Rome itself could not endure his madness any longer. Caligula screamed that Venus would curse them. He reached for a guard's sword. But they attacked swiftly, brutally, ending 4 years of terror. When it was over, the palace fell silent. The Garden of Venus, once filled with music, fear, laughter, and screams, became still. The women were freed. The rituals ended. And Rome erased every trace of what happened there. Except for the whispers that survived.